like you, it's really been an exciting 2 days, but I know we all hope that the next U.S. India Ideas Summit is held in person, so we have that connectivity again that we all treasure. I thought Nisha Biswal did a great job in outlining the 45th anniversary of the U.S. India Business Council and the rich history of the council in contributing to the U.S. India relationship. I think the next 45 years are going to be even more exciting for the U.S. India relationship, and I believe the council will continue to play a critical role in the relationship. And I'm very thankful for Nisha and her entire team for the work that they've done on behalf of the relationship and for the support that we give the India Business Council through the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and our Federation partners. Let me just say that that was a stirring address by the Prime Minister Modi on how the U.S.-India relationship can really realize the potential on both our nations and how we build a better future together. I think Prime Minister clearly spoke forcefully to the importance of India as a market and value of bringing the U.S.-India relationship together and encouraging American companies to make a contribution to this relationship. The Prime Minister's address and our next speaker, Ambassador Nikki Haley, cap a terrific 2-day summit that has brought thought-provoking discussion on the future of the economy and society. And we want to usher not just a look backwards, but most importantly, a look forward and how we address the COVID pandemic and present challenges. I speak for everyone at the Chamber that we're going to continue to stand by our true principles of free market enterprise, which drives international trade and commerce. They're important tenets that we live by every day. We must continuously address how to best support businesses, remove unnecessary barriers, and always look at business as an opportunity to create more jobs for the people of both India and the United States. This is very much reflected in the important work of the Council, spearheaded by our President, Nisha Biswal, but supported by Tom Donahue, myself, and the entire Chamber team. I am very thankful also to Nisha and her team for the important contribution, not just today, but the ongoing work of the Council. Our next guest, Ambassador Nikki Haley, understands how important diplomacy is from her experience, but she also very much understands the important role that business plays in tying nations together. She has a tremendous background in government, but she also brings an entrepreneurial and corporate background herself. Ambassador Haley understands that there is nothing more important to getting people back to work in the safest possible way, balancing health guidelines with that of ensuring economic activity and livelihoods. And she knows this firsthand as she is right now speaking this morning from South Carolina. Ambassador Haley has been an unabashed champion of the U.S.-India partnership and the shared values on which it is based: adherence to democratic governance, a respect for human rights, and a belief in our rules-based international order. As America's ambassador to the UN and as the first female governor of the state of South Carolina, Ambassador Haley has been a steadfast advocate and an embodiment of American values and leadership, bringing people together and building a consensus for a better future. She has surely left her stamp on the American political landscape, but that sounds like it's past tense. Ambassador Nikki Haley is certainly not past tense. She's very much a part of the future, and I'm sure will continue to make her impressions felt domestically as well as internationally. Ambassador Haley, the India Ideas Summit this year has been centered around the strategic and economic partnership between India and the United States and the vital role that our businesses play in advancing relationship. And it's an exciting time, a transformational time in this relationship. It's why we're so delighted to invite Ambassador Haley here today, who is one of our most prominent political leaders in this country, in a conversation with one of the most prominent journalists in India, Shereen Bhan, who is managing editor of one of India's largest and most respected news houses, CNBC, TV, 18, brings her own unique experiences, and we're delighted that she's joining this conversation today with Ambassador Nikki Haley. This is a fine way to conclude the U.S. India Business Council's India Summit 2020. I hope you join us for the next summit in India or in the United States in 2021. But the work continues forward, and let me now turn it over to Shereen Bhan for this interesting conversation that's about to take place and the final chapter of this historic and significant two-day summit on the U.S.-India relationship. Shereen?
Well, thank you very much for joining us here for the concluding session of the India Ideas Summit. And who better to end this conversation with than Ambassador Nikki Haley. Ambassador Haley, many thanks for joining us here at the summit. We've heard over the past 2 days from many people, including Secretary Pompeo and just a few moments ago from Prime Minister Modi, on the need to build on the India-US partnership. Natural allies, democracies, there has been a great degree of convergence over the last several years that we've been working together, especially in the last few years on the military side with joint exercises, with the Comcasa agreement, etc. But in light of this, seeing this relationship from the prism of countering China, how do you believe the dynamics will change?
Well, Shereen, it's great to be with you, and thank you for representing Indian women so well. I appreciate it. I'll tell you this. I think that while India and the United States have felt a lot of challenges over this past year, especially during COVID, it has created a lot of opportunities for both of them. I have been pleased to see the relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi strengthen over the past few years, and I think that was warranted. They're natural allies. India and the United States share a lot of the same values, the same work ethic, the same family values. And I think it's important that we just continue to take that relationship forward. But with the aggression that we're seeing from China against India and against the United States, it only makes more sense that we try and find more opportunities. And that's going to be in the supply chain side. That's going to be in the defense side. That's going to be in the healthcare side. It's going to continue to be in our tech companies and all of the other things. And so what I hope is that the United States will come together with India, along with our allies, Japan and Australia and New Zealand and South Korea, and try and find ways to continue to be less dependent on China, but realize there's a real opportunity in what India has to offer.
Speaking of making good of the opportunity that India has to offer, we heard from the External Affairs Minister Jaishankar earlier this evening, where he said that unfortunately, it's niggling issues on the trade front that have held back this relationship from achieving its true potential. Do you believe now that we seem to be jointly working towards taking on an aggressive or a more aggressive China, that we are perhaps going to move faster on addressing some of those long pending issues on both sides?
Well, I think, when India and the United States have tried to do a trade deal before, tariffs got in the way, primarily on agricultural products. And what we want to make sure that we do is look at the opportunities that we have, but be flexible enough in how we go forward. Everyone is going to start to look at India as they're looking at Vietnam and other places to see how they can get less dependent on China. What I hope that India does is look past the opportunity, but also see that they have to be flexible. That's true for labor laws. That's going to be true for land laws. That's going to be true for the bureaucracy that they have and tax reform. If India can make some concessions in order to bring all of this trade in, I think that there will be massive amounts, not just from the United States, but from other countries that really lean into India to try and do those things. And so, I think they're going to have to be flexible, just as the United States is going to have to be flexible and say, okay, let's look at other avenues besides China. I think India is going to have to be inviting from the standpoint that they do have to acknowledge infrastructure as an issue, as well as some other things, and see how they can be more enticing to countries to do that, because the political will from the United States to trade with India is there. The political will has to be there with India to also want to make the concessions so that more countries want to bend in to doing more trade with India.
You spoke of the concessions that India needs to make to try and draw in more foreign direct investment from the US. In fact, the Prime Minister sort of saying that India welcomes foreign direct investment, asking US companies to invest in India across a whole bunch of sectors, from insurance to aviation and defense. But what about reciprocity? While the US wants market access, India is saying, look, we need access when it comes to services. The H-1B issue keeps coming back, and there has been no movement, positive movement from an Indian perspective on that. If anything, the Indian side is frustrated with the back and forth. There's been no movement on totalization. So if there are concessions asked of and expected from India, what about the US?
I think there have to be concessions on both sides. I don't think that this is a one-sided thing. Look, there's nothing I would love more than a free trade deal between both US and India. I mean, that would be ideal. That would be, in my perfect world, would be what I would love. But certainly the H-1B visas is an issue. Many companies look at those visas as important to the US economy. And so I think that that is part of a trade deal. Those are things that have to be worked out from our side. And so that's why I said both countries are going to have to be flexible. Both countries are going to have to see the bigger win that we're looking for at the end of the road. And I think that with any deal, if both sides have the political will, and if both sides have the ability to be flexible, then good things can happen. And I think this is a relationship that's worth fighting for. I think this is a relationship that's worth trying to be flexible and make happen. This is a relationship that just makes sense. I've always thought that the India-United States relationship makes sense, and we're stronger together. And so I hope that we'll both work on how we can make this trade deal a win-win for everyone.
Well, we still have to see when we start to pick up on the FTA conversation. We're still waiting to see if a mini trade deal can get done ahead of the elections. But Ambassador Haley, let me ask you about how you see the multilateral institutions that have functioned for many decades reorient or are reshaped in light of these changing geopolitical dynamics. You spoke about the WHO and how you believe the WHO is going in the same way as many other multilateral institutions the US has decided to pull out. Do you then believe that we are going to be in an era of stronger bilateral relationships, stronger bilateral agreements, and moving away from multilateralism?
Well, multilateralism has to show itself to be fair and to be effective. And right now, it's not doing either. And so it's not that the United States doesn't want to be part of a multilateral approach, but the United States wants to feel like it's actually working. And I'll tell you, if you look at the United Nations, what we've seen is they continue to talk about old archaic issues. They don't talk about the issues of the day. And what we're saying is, here you have a situation where the World Health Organization and other countries knew and said, Taiwan in particular, said that they knew this was a human-to-human transmission that was coming out of China. The World Health Organization didn't act. And when they were able to have a meeting in January, they had China come in. They still didn't take part. They went to China instead, had diplomatic conversations, and it wasn't until the end of January where they said that we have a problem with the coronavirus. And at that point, they condemned the United States for banning travel from China. You've got a situation where it wasn't fair. You also have a situation where, we're hearing about the human rights on multiple levels. Why isn't the United Nations calling out the Uyghur situation in China? You have over 1 million people in concentration camps with forced sterilizations, forced labor, changing their way they think, the way they act. I mean, all of those things, that's a terrible human rights abuse. Yet no one will call out China on this. So it's proving to be unfair, and it's proving to be ineffective. And finally, as long as China keeps paying the dues into multilateral organizations as a developing country, it's hard to take it seriously. It's not been a developing country for a long time. They need to step up and pay fair dues just like the rest of the world. And so, multilateralism has a long way to go for it to be taken seriously. The world wants it to be taken seriously, but they have to be willing to change. And until that happens, I think the bilateral approach is stronger, better, and more effective.
Ambassador Haley, we're dealing with the COVID pandemic across the world. It has battered economies, including the U.S. economy, and of course, the Indian economy is also coping with it. This is a fresh assault on capitalism as well, and the need for more equitable, fair growth is the ask once again, and that debate is back front and center. I know that you've been cautioning against the return or the rise of socialism, but what do you believe needs to change in order for us to be able to protect capitalism as we know it, and yet ensure that it is a much more fair system?
Well, I think what you have to look at is capitalism is another word for freedom. And the United States has been extremely successful because we're a capitalistic society, because we're a free society. And so if you look prior to COVID, we had more people working than ever before. The stock market was through the roof, and everyone's retirements were so much fatter and doing well. And so capitalism does work. Socialism tends to come up as a conversation when things start to go downhill. We're going to have challenges. But when we have those challenges, we need to go back on the items that work. We know capitalism works. What we do need to do is make sure that it is fair. It is tough in a capitalist society to try and find out that there can be cronyism, there can be corruption. And in those, you have to weed that out. You have to keep it transparent. You have to hold it accountable. But capitalism is not the problem, and socialism will never be the answer. And I think what we have to do is continue to allow for opportunities. When I was governor in South Carolina, we had a program that took people from welfare to work and gave them the tools so that they could get a job. We took prisoners, instead of coming out of prisons and having to start all over, we trained them behind the fence. So when they came back, they already had jobs lined up. You have to get creative in the way that you do that. And I think that the challenges that U.S. and India will face in their economies are going to be the residual effects of COVID. But what we have to do is go back to what worked and continue to get creative and say, okay, now how can we continue to improve on what we had?
So what is the creative way that you believe that the U.S. can improve on what it has? You're right about the stock markets, but what about the real economy? What is it that you would like to see?
Well, I think that what's important is we have to make sure that all areas have broadband and internet coverage. We have to make sure that training programs like what we had in South Carolina allow everyone to get trained for jobs that are better. We have to make sure that we continue to look at our schools and improve our schools on education and make sure that we're training them for the jobs of the time. And we have to make sure that we continue to recruit companies and have companies that have good paying jobs. And through those, that's the way that that's going to happen. And it's worked for us all of this time. I've always said the United States is not perfect. It's a work in progress. But at the same time, it has done well, and it will continue to do well if we stick to lifting people up, giving them opportunities, and allowing fairness and good opportunities for everyone.
You spoke of fairness, Ambassador Haley, and let me ask you this in the context of the statements that have come in from Secretary Pompeo, talking about the possibility of banning Chinese apps like TikTok, keeping them out of 5G, in fact, saying very clearly that India should embrace U.S. technologies when it comes to 5G and keep the Chinese out. What more do you believe we're likely to see in terms of U.S. action against China economically?
Well, I think that you've seen sanctions in any companies that are participating in the encampment of Uyghurs. I think you're seeing the fact that the consulate in Houston has been closed down because we know that there have been misdeeds basically going on within that consulate, and there could be others. What we know is spying has happened. I mean, we just recently saw that the Chinese were trying to hack into researchers that were working on the vaccines. It's hard to find anything that China is working on that they're not cheating to try and find out what their competition is doing, or either stealing the information in the process. And so what we see is this is a national security threat. It's not that we don't want Americans to buy t-shirts and light bulbs from China, or that we don't want China to buy grains and produce, grains and poultry from the United States. But we're not going to allow for our tech companies to be stolen from, and we're not going to allow spying capabilities like TikTok to happen. We're going to always go forward looking at China as a national security threat. They've given us many reasons to look at them that way, and we're not going to be naive to that. I mean, you look at the fact that China is building up their military. You look at the fact that they now have a commission that says any company that does business in China has to coordinate with the Chinese military. That's a red flag in itself, especially for tech companies. And then you just look at the evidence of what they've done. They have cheated and stealed in terms of intellectual property for a long time. We've seen how they've taken over and gotten into the World Trade Organization and not wanted to play nice or have friends with any other countries. And so why should we continue to treat them in a way that we have been treating them for years and not look at it as the fact that we're on to them? We're not going to continue to treat them the way they've been treated, and we're going to be smart in the way that we go forward. China is now a national security threat to the United States, and the United States is not going to be naive about it.
Mm-hmm. So if China is a national security threat to the US, is the US presidential election going to be about China?
I think that'll be one factor. I think that you have President Trump, who very much sees China as a threat. We've seen that with the sanctions he's put on. We see how he's done that with the travel ban. We see how he's called out the World Health Organization. We've seen that how he's managed the tariffs. And I think that you have Joe Biden, who has said that, you know, China is not the problem, and who was against the travel ban to China, and who has not shown in any of his time that he was in the Obama administration as realizing the threat that China had. So I think it will be one of the factors that's going to be very important in this next election.
Nikki Haley, do we see you on the ballot anytime soon, 2024? Are you going to surprise us earlier?
I can tell you right now, I'm going to be campaigning and working very hard for President Trump. I think where we have come on foreign policy, where we saw the economy prior to COVID is very strong. I believe in the policies that he's put forward, and I'll be campaigning hard for him and look forward to a win by President Trump in November.
What about 2024?
You know, it's a year is a lifetime in politics. It would not be smart of me to start thinking of 2024 now. Our focus is on November. We'll keep doing that. And we'll take it a year at a time after that.
You know, let me end then by asking you, Ambassador Haley, about the India-US relationship, because I know that this is a relationship that you're most excited about, given your roots as well. What do you believe both sides need to be mindful of as we try and really build on what seems to now be a much more concerted effort to have convergence?
Well, first of all, I can tell you, I believe in the goodness of the Indian people. I just do. And, you know, I've seen it within my family. I've seen it growing up in the Gurdwara. I've seen it in my trips to India. I know how capable the Indian people are. I know how skilled the workforce is. I know the opportunities that businesses have. I know the skill and the trade that can be done through sharing of ideas between the United States and India. So yes, there's a personal side of me that very much sees the value of what India has to offer the United States and what the United States has to offer to India. And so, you know, I spoke with President Trump about this when I first got into office. I spoke to Prime Minister Modi about the importance of this relationship. And I think I'll always advocate for it, because I know that you have genuine goodwill between these two countries, and you have so many shared values that allow for a very strong relationship. And whether the issue is China or anything else, watching these two countries come together in the name of helping each other through the coronavirus, in the name of helping each other by coming up with a trade deal, in the name of helping each other through defense and protecting our borders, we should always be allied. And I think that alliance is important. I think it's strong. It is personal to me, but also it's personal to me as an American, and it's personal to me as an Indian American. And so I will always continue to fight for that relationship. I think it's very, very important.
Well, Ambassador Haley, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for joining us here at the India Ideas Summit. We appreciate you taking time out to join us for the concluding session. It's been fun to speak with you about a whole host of issues, and we do hope that the ideas that you've shared with us on building this partnership are in fact realized, and that we have this conversation in person at the next Ideas Summit, hopefully not online, hopefully in person. But thanks very much for joining us here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you in person next time. God bless.
Thank you very much. With that, it is time for us to wrap things up here at the India Ideas Summit.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Haley and Shereen, for that fantastic conversation in the closing session. And what an incredible 2 days it's been. We have heard from our political leaders, our business leaders. We've heard from the Prime Minister himself about the importance of this U.S. India corridor. We've heard about the opportunities that it represents, but also the unmet potential that we have ahead of us and the steps it's going to take by both governments and industry to be able to walk down the road and fulfill the potential of this important U.S.-India economic and strategic partnership. I really want to take a moment right now to thank the people who have made all of this possible. First of all, the incredible lineup of speakers that we've had over these last 2 days, the fact that they have come with ideas, with inspiring words, and with words of wisdom to share with all of us across this U.S.-India corridor has meant so much to us. I also want to thank our incredible sponsors who have really taken their hard-earned resources and helped to invest them into us and make us into a stronger organization. The U.S. India Business Council is strong because of the support of our sponsors, the support of our members, the support of our U.S. Global Board of Directors, and our India Advisory Council. I also want to acknowledge the incredible support that the U.S. India Business Council gets from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. As I said, it is not just the support of the last year or two, but the support of the last 45 years that has allowed us to achieve what we are able to achieve and to help play our role in bringing the U.S.-India partnership into its full potential. And finally, I want to thank all of the staff members on USIBC and all of the tech support and event support from the U.S. Chamber that has enabled us to put together this incredible program. Finally, as we heard from Ambassador Haley and Shereen and everyone else, we really want to reconnect with all of you in person. So let's hope that we can work together to resolve the challenges that we are currently facing so that our businesses can help find the vaccines and create the opportunity for reconvening in person in the years ahead. So thank you for tuning in, all of you. If you missed any portion of this, we will be putting our programs on our YouTube channel, and we will be rebroadcasting and accessing the video feed from today's sessions on this very location in about 1 hour's time. So come back anytime to refresh your mind on some of the important conversations that took place. Be well, be safe, and see you soon in the coming days.